This presentation was information gathered from the Carrel Tiffany and Hollis French West Hartland Homestead Notes, from the Second Congregational Church Records, and the Methodist Church Records, and also the History of Hartland by Stanley Ransom Sr. First, I had to go back and say, who lived here? Who was here on this site before the Methodist Church was built here? So bear with me with a little bit of genealogy on the people that lived here, and think on this. Of course, it's the site on which it stands today was the home of Aaron Crane in 1810. So we're talking, obviously, horse and buggy, no electricity, etc. time. Now, the Crane story goes as this. It kind of comes interesting, so bear with me for the ending. Aaron Crane's parents came from Killingworth, Connecticut, moving to Barkhamsted, where his father Ebenezer marries a Jeremiah Tiffany in 1778. Now, Jeremiah was a sister to our noted Tory Consider Tiffany, and one of the first settlers to the West Hartland Mountain in 1760. Aaron was born in Barkhamsted, and he marries Hartland-born Sybil Atkins in 1804. In 1810, it is known they are living on this property, and he has a family of 5. They have 2 more children by the year 1819. They moved to Winsted for a time, as in the 1860 census, it shows them that he was a mechanic in Winsted in 1860. So in 1870, the census shows Aaron as a retired blacksmith and living with their firstborn, Dennison Crane. Now, Dennison Crane is listed as a farmer. But the house that Dennison built in 1856 is at 114 Highview Road. And it was known as the summer home of Anna L. William Crane, no relative. She was a New York literary agent, and she is the one who brought Gone with the Wind to the big screen. And so it was at Dennison's Crane home that all of this occurred. And she did more than one move that came to the big screen. So it's very interesting how that the dots got connected of this Dennison Crane that we knew about previous to knowing Aaron now. So Aaron lives here in 1810, but then in about a little after that, Daniel Cooley of Granville, Massachusetts, had a store. So think about this spot. Had a store that is said to have stood a little north and a little east of the house around the same time. Arnold Oatman also traded there in about 1820. Now Arnold is the one who owned the house across the street that now belongs to the Ransom family, back to the Ransom family actually. He owned the house across the street and he ran it as a hotel from 1815 to 1830. About 1835, a Reverend Edson lived in the house and taught school in a room over the store. About 1838, Henry Robinson occupied the house and the store. Now, he marries a Bates. He marries Betsy Bates. More likely is the same of the Stephen Bates and also of our Charlie Bates from East Hartland that we all knew where the Christmas tree farm was. That was the Bates farm. So he married Betsy Bates, and he had 5 children. He's appointed a postmaster in 1839. In the 1850 census, it lists him as a carpenter and a joiner, and he was our town clerk in 1870 and lived here. About 1850, Higgins Huxford, a blacksmith, bought the house and built a shop about 3 rods west of the north wall of the cemetery, so not very far off. We'd be looking out this window and we'd see our blacksmith shop. He carried on the blacksmith business there until his death in 1871, followed by E. Selden Carrier, who married a Huxford. So it was a relative, continued to live here, and he owned and carried on the blacksmith business until 1885. At this point, there is no trace of either the store or the blacksmith shop, of course. So that is the Crane side of the story here. Now, I just like thinking that this was just a really busy little corner for a while. So now no one is living here. And I'm going to go back to the Methodists in Hartland now. Now, Methodism in West Hartland may be said to have begun with the establishment of the Granville Circuit on June 20th, 1795, when 2 riders were assigned to cover a large part of Hartford County in Connecticut, as well as in Granville and other towns in Massachusetts. The Beech Hill Church in Granville became the center of the circuit riders, they were called, who made periodic trips throughout their territory, preaching in the homes of the interested brethren, before a church building was even erected. The first ministers being appointed here were Ezekiel Worcester and Jason Perkins, I believe not of Hartland. At that time, the Granville Circuit included the following towns in Connecticut: Windsor, Suffield, Simsbury, Granby, Barkhamsted, and Hartland, as well as considerable area in southwestern Massachusetts. This was making a circuit of 200 miles in circumference that they would ride around and preach. Billy Heber, who had been appointed to the Granville Circuit in 1800, and again in 1816 and 17, mentions in his memoirs, many Heartlanders were converted in a good revival of religion. And it was around 1820, 1825 when Hartland forms its first Methodist society. The first Methodist church building in West Hartland was built in 1834. It was about 1 mile south from the West Hartland Center on the northwest corner of the crossroads, as it says here, one leading from West Granville to Barkhamsted, and the center from East Hartland to Hitchcockville, or Riverton Road, and it was known as Moore's Corner. Land for the structure was donated to the trustees in 1833 by Rideout Moore, who operated a tavern on the opposite corner, and that is Ellen LaCase's house today. The trustees were William Peters, Anson B. Tiffany, again the Tiffany name, William Spencer, Henry Robinson, and Daniel Tiffany. Go back on that. Didn't catch that. But there you go. Henry Robinson lived here in 1838. He was in this particular site. I just picked that up. So here you go. I was wondering how they got the property. Anyways, Henry Robinson was both a member and a trustee of the Methodist Church. And then we had Daniel Tiffany also. The shingles for this particular church were built at the William C. French family sawmill on Riverton Road. That's the corner of Route 20 and Mill Street. Hartland. And he donated the shingles to the church. That same year, Hartland was set off from Granville Circuit, and it became part of the Colebrook Circuit. Now, the early records of the West Hartland Methodist Church have been lost or destroyed. But we do have 2 sources: the quarterly conference for the Colebrook River Church, Connecticut, meeting minutes, starting in 1859 for the Methodist Episcopal Colebrook River Church. And the West Hartland record started in 1879. So we do have some of those now at the Historical Society because of Sally Dewey, who passed on the Methodist Church files to us. The first official church record on file is that contained in the present Methodist record book, whose first entries indicate the recording starting in 1892. So I'm going to read from those minutes and records. So under the heading of historical records, the entries from the Methodist record book started in 1892 as follows. Quote, the first Methodist church in West Hartland was built in the year 1834, the society having met for worship in private homes for many years before. The structure was erected nearly a mile south of the center at a junction where 4 roads meet, the work being largely due to the enterprise and energy of the Tiffany family. Divine service was conducted in the church for a long series of years, but eventually there were intervals when there was no stationed minister and its doors were closed. During the period of the church's history, among the presiding elders who officiated were the Reverends Nash, Barnes, and Hubble. While of the preachers in charge may be mentioned the names, and I'm going to just use last name for time purposes: Codlin, McCoy, Marcus, Delavan, Curtis, Northrop, Perry, Zarvell, Ranger, and Hurd. Okay, unquote. Now, I thought it was kind of interesting just because maybe you know some family names. These were the members of the Methodist Church, the 5-year span of 1877 to 1882. And again, that's before the church is here. Those members' family names were the Bushnells, the Cables, Coes, Cowdreys, DeWolf, Ferry, French, Giddings, one of our original settlers was a Giddings, Hill, Ives, Spencer, Stebbins, Tiffany's, and the Tiffany's, all right? 10 years later, we now have family names that are mentioned here in 1892 to 1895. And I want to mention there were 25 members total in 1882. In 1895, we have 22 members noted. And this is from the minutes of the quarterly. We have Beach, Bennett's, Browns, the Coes, Dean, Ferry, French, and I'll make, quote, two things here mentioned. There's a William C. French that we mentioned did the shingling. It was, he was a member, and his wife Carrie played the organ, and it mentioned that their two boys would pump the organ for her so she would be able to play it. So it had been pretty hard. We also have, it was Watson E. French is mentioned, and he was known as a strong Christian character, a Methodist class leader, a choir leader, and the superintendent of the Sunday school here. So that was the Frenches, but then we also had the Gibbs, Lears, Osborns, and I'm thinking it's even Amos Osborne is one of the members there.
I have a picture of it.
And you have it with you, okay. And also the Stratton family, and they were in the Hollow, we know that. So back to quote from the minutes. We have in 1894, I should say the years 1892 to 1894. In the beginning of the years 1892, the church up to that time having been closed for some years, the Reverend F.B. Adams was appointed as resident minister. He having previously entered the neighborhood as an evangelist. Under the ministry of this Ernst brother, there was a general awakening to religious life and purpose in the district, and permanent good accomplished. The society having become reorganized and reestablished. The presiding elders for 1892 were Reverend Beach, he being succeeded the next year by Reverend North, and Brothers Adams concluded his ministry at the beginning of 1894, so he didn't stay all that long. The minutes read in 1894, the recordings, 1894 to 1896. During these 2 years that Reverend Crandall North continued as presiding elder, the preacher in charge was the Reverend George Bennett, who had come to Connecticut from England about a year previously. During this brother's ministry, energetic efforts were directed toward the building of a new church edifice. The existing structure, having become very dilapidated, is unfit for divine worship. Enthusiasm was aroused, a subscription list was opened, volunteer labor offered, and through the blessing of God, the basis of the enterprise was laid. In the years 1896 to 1899, the preacher in charge was still Reverend, was in charge was Reverend J.N. Crane. So again, here's our Crane name. So they were close to the church. And it was during this first year that the new church was commenced and nearly completed. The pastor preaching most of the time in the brick parsonage next door, and living at a farmhouse about 2.5 miles away. So the sources do state they dismantled the first church and rebuilt using all the materials. In the early part of the second year, the new church was completed and dedicated June 10th, 1897. That's where we're in today. When the church was commenced, there was about $750 subscribed. When it was dedicated, this was increased to over $1,500, which still left them $400 and $500 in debt. The building costing them $2,000 to build, if only. So after 1897, and the church is now here and dedicated, we have some reverends. I want to say their times here. Reverend Myron French made a good record and served the community well here. They had a Reverend James Taylor, resigned on account of poor health. They then had a Reverend John Hillaby, resigned to go to supply a charge. I'm not sure what that might mean. Maybe it was, I'm not sure what that means. Reverend H.I. Thayer. During Reverend H.I. Thayer pastorate, the church enjoyed great material and fairly good spiritual prosperity. The debt of $450 was paid, and a new bell costing $50 was installed. And that bell you'll be able to see today. The church and parsonage were painted at an actual cost about $30 for materials. The work being done by, and I didn't mention it, but I should mention the year. That's 1905 we're talking about. 1903 to 1905 is what we're talking about right now. A new organ was purchased at a cost of $50. And the benevolent collections for the 2 years amounted to $160, while the pastor's salary was paid in full was only $200 a year. No, that was some nice information. In April of 1905, Reverend Thomas Booth was appointed to charge, coming here directly from England also, and found a church free from debt, an energetic, sympathetic, and enthusiastic community. What is being said here? At a quarterly meeting held on October 6, 1907, Reverend Booth was given permission to resign to take up new duties in the West. So he only made it a couple of years. During his, is it the rocks in Hartland? Is that the problem? I don't know.
I think so.
During his ministry in West Hartland, many improvements had been made to the parsonage, the money being provided by the Ladies' Aid. January 1908, the Reverend T.E.F. Morton, a missionary from India, on a visit in this country, was appointed to the church and served until April of that year. The Reverend Mr. Sizer coming to the charge and staying until April of 1909, the following year. Reverend George W. Eastman was appointed as pastor in 1909 and reappointed for 4 more years. Interest throughout the year was good and the attendance was large. He and his family were much beloved by the whole community. So I have to be that offside comment. He was very good. It was 4+ years that he stayed. It makes a big difference. Succeeding Reverend Mr. Eastland were the Reverend W.D. Hall in 14, Reverend Alfred Race in 1915, and Reverend Robert Thomas in 1916, unquote. Now, Reverend Dodd served both the Methodist and the Congregational Church after that in 1917 to 1922, preaching the Sunday morning services in the Second Congregational Church, not here, and was the last Methodist minister to reside in the parsonage next door, the brick building next door. Yeah, now.
Joanne,
Yes,
his wife,
I'm going to say that next.
oh, you got it? Okay. Was sister to name.
Parsonage to parsonage, okay, we'll come back to that. Bear with me, caught me off guard there. Okay, adjacent church, yeah. The parsonage house, I wanted to just talk about the house next door for a minute. The parsonage house info from the Tiffany notes. The house and lot bought by the Methodist Episcopal Society in the 1890s and used as a parsonage until 1923. Last Methodist minister to occupy was Harry and Bertha Hitchcock Dodd. Okay, and as Marcia was wanting to bring up, this was Bertha Hitchcock was Mabel Hitchcock's sister, and the Hitchcocks lived across the street. Yeah, where that was the Cole house. Some of the occupants since that time that lived in the brick house next door have been H. Parks Holcomb, Perry and Marjorie Osborne Ransom. The Methodist Society sold the house and lot to Byron and Dorothy Stratton, who sold it to John F. and Helen Ransom Griffin. And the Ransom family continued to own it today in 2025. Now back to some more church information. In September of 1923, when the Methodist and Congregational Church federated and became known as the West Hartland Federated Church, this building was used as a community house. After the federation, the Methodist Church edifice was little used and soon became in need of some major repairs. A renovation program began in the 1940s, with much of the work being accomplished by volunteer labor and individual contributions. Interestingly, in 1941, the original site of the church at the corner of Riverton and 181 was purchased by the town of Hartland with the intention of building a West Hartland Town Hall. after the discontinuation and the disposal of the old town hall in Hartland Hollow. So I guess my understanding, they were going to do a town hall in east and a town hall in west, but that obviously did not occur. What happened though, during this time, 1940 to 1954, the town used the community house until 1953, until 1953, the town hall was built as an addition to the then West Hartland Elementary School. So there used to be the town meetings in this area too, from 1940 to 1954. Presently, the town hall that was built is now today, of course, called a community hall and our library. Of note, in 1961, the Hartland Historical Society housed its collection of historical materials in one of the rooms here. I'm not sure where, but that's where, and we believe that probably is mostly due because Stanley Ransom Sr. was a very noted supporter and member of the Methodist Church. So I don't know if anybody knows that, but then actually it left here, I believe that's when it went to the basement of the Hartland Library for some time. In 1961, Methodism in West Hartland had not entirely vanished from the scene. Some 25 members of the Methodist Society still maintain their individual identity and labor to keep alive the enthusiasm, which for a time at least made Methodism a vital force in the religious life of this community. Church officers in 1965 were Stanley Ransom, Ida Ransom, Robert Ransom, Mabel Cole, which is the Hitchcock, James Hall, and Perry Ransom. Now, in April of '67, 2 years later, the New York Methodist Conference session voted to discontinue the West Hartland Methodist Church because of too few members, and 19 members transferred to the Second Congregational Church. The New York Conference deeded the Methodist building, the community house, to the Second Congregational Church for $1, which was accepted at a special meeting held in September of 1967. The Methodist members joined the church during a morning service in November of that year, 1967. And just a note, the Second Scholastical Society was dissolved in 1960, and that's when the church was incorporated and then became the Second Congregational Church. So that is a lot of what I gathered. Now, from what we have, I'm sure maybe there's some more. I don't know. That is what I came up with. Now, the only thing I want to mention here is they did have church renovations and repair records, and I'm giving this a copy to Susan so she can look at it another time. But I just was going to mention some highlights of repairs that were done here to get a sense of that. Our 1992 renovations that came here, and we were chatting with this earlier. A new bathroom was constructed, moving the room to the west side of the building of the main room. The pastor's new office was made in the space where the previous two bathrooms existed. Originally, the same area was the main entrance in the foyer of the Methodist Church. A telephone was installed. That's 92, it took a while. 1990s, the large stepstone from the former entrance was moved to its present entranceway that you walked on today, I believe, is what we're saying, okay? In 1996, ceiling renovations were done by Johnny Ransom. He repaired and he rang the bell for the first time in decades. It didn't fall down, so I guess we're all good. So it's still up there. 2002, the church illuminating bulletin board with a glass door was installed on the community house lawn in memory of Pauline Scarrett. And two small arborvitaes were planted on each side, which I believe those are the two that are still out there today, a little bit taller, but unfortunately the display cabinet did not make it through. So those are some highlights of some repairs. There's more here, not necessarily to say. But in summary, the Methodist Church from 1897 to 1920, the Methodist Church was the Methodist Church from 1897 to 1923 for 26 years. It was a community house, 1923 to 1967, for the West Hartland Federated Church, by joining the Second Scholastical Society and the Methodist Church for 44 years. The community house for the Second Congregational Church from 1967 to 2019. This making it, after 122 years as a church building or community house, It became privately owned in 2019. So what I would like to do before we end this is I thought, Austin, if you would like to come up, Austin, to tell us what you feel about the structural pieces to the church. And we're going to follow that along with Marcia coming and ending up with some very nice memories. You want to come up here or stand there, whichever you choose. Come on up. Change face.
The church is 96, 97, shingle style. Kind of a asymmetric form. It's got the front shingles on the gable, kind of pedimented windows, kind of typical of that era into the early 1920s. And then a couple of weeks ago, Susan gave me a tour of the tower in the house, and you can see the hand-hewn beams. I believe some of them were recycled from their other church.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I believe.
yeah.
Well, they dismantled the old church
Yeah.
and brought whatever they could here. So
Yeah.
what we
So-
can prove is old from there or not is remains to be seen.
So on the tour, you'll get to see it. Structurally, it's pretty sound. It has, I'm sure this is probably the pulpit was right here.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a lot of the kind of late Victorian kind of trim. It's got molding, a lot of the wainscoting. So I think the contractor did a really good job preserving it, and Susan as well. Although my own bone to pick was the vinyl window replacements, but that's just an aside. But it does.
They're not vinyl.
Not vinyl?
They're
Oh.
composite.
Composite. Well,
But yeah.
yeah,
Well, yeah, that was a tough decision.
yeah. That's just a aside, but it still captures the 2/2 window configuration of the time. I guess that's all I really have to say. Kind of brief, but
No, that's excellent.
yeah.
Thank you very much. So that's where we look for Austin when we do this book to give us that little bit of a structural on the buildings that we'll be taking pictures of. So Marcia, why don't you come on up? And if you don't mind, maybe introduce yourself to the group, and we'd love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll probably
What do you need?
probably be saying
Oh, that's
stuff that
perfectly
you
fine.
said.
Hearing it from you is
But I
all
brought a
better.
picture of Amos Asper, who was one of the members in the early 1900s. And he lived in the house right across from my house, which is right up here. My house is 240 Center Street, and he's right across the road. But most of the members, that 20-odd members, were all Ransom family. The Osborns, my husband's parents, Perry Ransom and Marjorie Ransom, she was an Osborn. So everybody was related in that 20-odd list of members, most of them. And I have a lot of pictures of the Osborn family. But I remember my mother-in-law saying that they used to have socials upstairs and dancing because it wasn't allowed in the sanctuary. And of course, out there is where they had all of their meals, and refreshments were out in your first room.
And I think that Amos Osborne is related to Chuck's family.
Yes, they are.
Because he has it on a tree, Amos.
Oh, he does? Okay.
Yeah.
We were trying to figure that out.
Yes,
So, anyway.
yeah, they're related. I think they were cousins or something.
Probably.
To those of you who don't know me, my name is Marcia Crunden Ransom. And there was a joke in our family that once I married Johnny, one half of the town was my family and the other half was Johnny's family. We married, and then the whole town, we were all related. That was the beginning of the joke in the Ransom family. But the best time in my life was growing up in this small town of West Hartland, where I felt the love and security around me from everyone who lived here. The population at that time was 300, believe it or not, 300 people. And most of us were related at the time. My mother was from the Stewarts and the Emmerichs. So that was another branch that had quite a few people in it too. But she used to walk up from the Hollow and go to church here, you know, over at her Sunday school. She walked up every Sunday morning. And of course, that's what happened to me too. I had to go to church every Sunday morning and sit with my mother in the church. As a child in the 1940s, life was very simple here. We had close family ties, and I attended the one-room schoolhouse that was built in 1937 down here, the brick building, which is now the library room. We had grades 1 through 8 there. And Sally, Dewey's sister, and I, and Carolyn, and Nancy Emmerich. There were the 3 girls, and Gordon Crendon, and John Olson, and Dick Griffin. That was first grade down there. We didn't have kindergarten in those days. And of course, going to school, of course, and going to church every Sunday at the local church. My first memory of Sunday mornings meant going to church with my mother, and then coming home to enjoy a big Sunday dinner, usually having company to share the meal. The Sabbath was truly a day of rest and relaxation. No one worked and no stores were open for business. And I remember at least once a month, my mother would have the minister and his family for dinner. And it was a big dinner. I mean, you know, the pot roast and mashed potatoes and the whole shebang. And that tradition stayed for many, many years. We always had a big Sunday dinner. In the late 1890s, when the new Methodist church building was reconstructed at its present location, people were still traveling to church by horse and buggy. Land was purchased from John Hitchcock, that was Mabel's father, and the farmhouse over here across the road. And the land was purchased from John Hitchcock to build new sheds to shelter the teams of horses and those attending the church services. These sheds were located at what now is the top portion of Sally Dewey's driveway. Right across the road from
Right across.
on the flat, those sheds were down there. But when I was a child and I started Sunday school, those sheds were no longer standing. I think they just rotted and they ended up just clearing them. When your grandparents bought that house, Sally. When Uncle Stanley bought your house, did he build that house down there or was it already there?
I can't remember the name now.
I believe it was Griffin.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Griffins owned it. They were part of the,
Down there?
yeah, I think they owned that little house and then
Because Griffin's on this one.
it was more than one, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
They were from New York City.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. And she used to come up in the summertime, I guess.
Oh. Okay. In the mid-1950s, Leonard and Mary Ransom, who had purchased the former brick parsonage, agreed to share the water from their well with this building. And it was piped across the driveway at the time that blacktop wasn't there, so it was the dirt driveway. Each winter, the water was shut off to prevent, of course, the pipes from freezing. When I was very young, I remember both the church and the community house, both buildings, would be closed from January through March. We did not have church services at all. I remember it just stopped. And once we got a furnace in the church building, then we stayed open over there, but we kept this building closed. In 1958, the youth choir was born. Remember that, Sally?
Yeah.
And their exuberance and energy created a new life in the church, as well as having a new young pastor Reverend Richard Nordgren. This is when I began playing the organ for the church, and I was in my 50th year at the keyboard when I retired from that position in 2007. The choir not only performed a gospel concert at the Congregational Church in Winsted, they also sang at the Shiloh Baptist Church in Hartland. That was an experience to, it was an experience.
That was an experience.
It really was. We soon found out that day, really up here where we lived, we were not used to having black people. You know, I mean,
Not in Hartland.
not in Hartland, there weren't any. We didn't know what life was like down in the city. Well, when we went down there, we were the only white people. And you know, it made us as kids realize how they felt, even then. And we had the best time. It was wonderful. But I remember, you know, they come down the aisle and they're clapping, and where we didn't do any of that. You know? It was quite an experience.
Can I ask, please, Marcia, what year was that about?
1958.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the choir started raising money, and we raised quite a bit of money because we bought our own robes and sashes. We purchased new hymnals for the church, and we even had the floodlights, which you have now. That's when we bought the floodlights and had them installed on the church lawn. That was in 1958. For several years, the choir put on suppers and dances by raising money for the church, and in later years, new faces with the same good intentions raised money putting on ziti suppers, which became a big hit, and music night too. Even large tag sales were part of its history, weren't they, Laura? Mm-hmm. And all of these activities, of course, were held here in the community house. Okay. All of our dinners were in this room, and then the food serving was out there. The community house became the center for many different types of activities, as you can see. In the early days of the 1940s and 50s, the West Hartland Cemetery Association would hold its annual meeting every Memorial Day here. This was largely attended, and a sit-down meal would be served by the Ladies' Guild. Local young girls, myself included, would serve the tables and help clean up. Usually 50 or 60 people, or maybe more, would attend. It really was like a homecoming. And that's when they used to close the doors and the young people were sent to go play. And then they had their meeting. And, it was a great time. The Ladies' Guild remained active for many decades and raising money when needed. But just imagine raising enough to purchase the chandeliers for these two buildings. And they did. And I know that the church chandelier is still up, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I just took a picture of it.
That was good. Because they were originally kerosene lamps. And of course they were electrified.
So we don't know what happened to the one
Probably in
from
the
here, right?
30s. Well, the fellow that bought this place
He disposed of it.
took it down. Playing setback and card game was very popular in the 1950s, and the Ladies' Guild began to sponsor regularly scheduled card parties here. That's why you always saw many card tables here. if
Yeah,
you
we still
remember it.
have, I think there's a couple left
Really?
over there.
Yeah, there were 8 or 10 they used to set up with tables of 4. And you played with 4 people, you played partners, and then whoever got the highest score, someone would blow the whistle, and then they would move to the next table until they kept going around, and then they were finished. And there were prizes were given out, and then refreshments were served. But that went on for quite a while, I would say until the 60s maybe. And each Halloween excited the local children as they anxiously awaited the costume party here at the house, and there were awards given in age categories. Bobbing for apples and pin the tail on the donkey was enjoyed by many. That was a fun night. I remember having that for many years. Over the years, the hall was rented out for private parties, bridal or baby showers, or family gatherings. And the executive committee held all their meetings here in that room out there every month for years. In the 1970s, the original front entrance door, as you stated, was closed off, and the two bathrooms were installed in the foyer. And in 1992, they renovated again, and that's when they put their new bathroom over there. In the 1990s, the Sunday school was held here at the community house instead of the church building. Every morning, every Sunday morning, during the same time the church had its service. The arrangement appeared to have worked fine for many years. And previously to this, Sunday school was always held in the church building after the service. So whoever went home would have to come back to pick their children up. But it worked for many years. That's the only way that we had it. My mother was superintendent of Sunday school for 20-some years, I think, if not longer. And we just separated in the church in groups. But I think probably the bell that we used to ring is probably still might be even in the drawer over at the pulpit in the church. And maybe they brought it over here. They must have brought it over here to use it. In 1992, the renovations to the kitchen at the community house were made, and as Joanne stated, the two bathrooms were removed from the foyer area and put over here. An office for the minister was created for the pastor for the first time downstairs here, and the telephone was put in. John Ransom and Herb Crundon moved that large stepstone.
Had to be them.
I know. That's why I had to mention it. They moved it from the front of the doors, the front entrance, the original front entrance, and they moved it where it is now. And one day, years later, when I was attempting to unlock the door to get in to do some photocopying, I accidentally dropped my keys down a crack between my feet. I never did find the keys. They're still out there. If your stepstone ever gets moved, and you find a set of keys, they're mine.
I'll let you know if I find it.
And in order for the main room to be blocked off from the front entrance room, a large wooden door panel, I was telling Susan about it, could be manually pulled out of the wall, and it slid on the track that's on the floor back here. Mm-hmm. And there were two hinge doors on either side that opened and closed if you wanted to go in and out. But it was to separate the sanctuary, if they were having a church service, with whatever was going out there, maybe even for dinners or something. And as I told Susan, I believe, unless he took it out and they moved it, that panel is still inside that wall. It would be nice to know that.
It would,
Yeah.
And when not in use, we used to just push it back into the wall. And then those two doors, one would swing that way and it would close off the stairway, just loose. And the other one would go up against the wall on this side.
Huh, okay.
And we lived like that for years. On May 4th, 1980, a beautiful maple tree was planted by the congregation on the knoll of the community house lawn at a special dedication service to commemorate the 200th anniversary of the Second Congregational Church. Unfortunately, the tree was cut down after the community house was sold in 2018. And I have photos. I'll put them over there for you to see. Also in the year of 1980, during the celebration of the 200th anniversary of the church, the original pewter communion service set was obtained. I believe it was between Stanley and my mother that they were able to talk the state library into letting us borrow it.
Linda, yeah.
I think they had to mortgage their houses for it. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
And it was on display in the church of for the service of that old home day that day. I mean, it really was breathtaking to see it. You know, that you could hold it and touch it and think this was here 200 years ago. And it's still, well, the library building still has it, and hopefully it's still being
Yeah, the
cared
state
for.
library.
I have pictures of that too for you to see. We have certainly been blessed by so many wonderful people who have worked so diligently over the many years to keep the church alive in this community. And I want to thank you, Susan, for allowing us to be here today, and your gracious hospitality is deeply appreciated. Thank you. And if you have any questions, Sally's the historian of the church. You can ask her.
You got Sally that you can ask questions about the community housing. Obviously, Marcia's here.
I've lived here forever.
Right, so they have their stories you can definitely invite, and when you can walk around the house and
I
point
know.
things out.
Just a couple of things.
Oh, please.
That's the Reverend George Bennett was Jarvis Waterman's father. If anybody else remember Jarvis Waterman?
I never met her, but she lived in the brick house for a little while, didn't she?
No,
At the pond.
Doors, floors, and fire.
Pinehurst Lake.
Pinehurst, gotcha.
But Jarvis, she and her husband were involved with the first big renovation here at the church. When they put in the 92 version, I think it was. But she and her husband did a lot of work for the church too, and he was moderator for a while.
I'll make a note in that.
And I think that was it. Yes.
I'll update my notes.
A big branch fell off of that tree, I think, that's why he,
Is that why you took it down?
He took it down.
like, and
It shouldn't have been.
another comment that I have, when you talked about that glass cabinet down there, or glass signboard down there.
Yeah, the display board that was
Yeah,
put up for public.
it's moved to the church.
Yeah, they.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
at
you.
the
I
church.
did- Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that it is one and the same then.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a
So we will make note of that the Pauline Scarrett display
Yeah, that was a memory
moved to the second congregational property. Very
Okay.
good.
Oh, yes,
Now, this seam here in
Yeah.
your floor,
yes, I wondered about that.
it's where the pulpit was. It was raised about that high, and it went over to the wall. And then the podium was here, and there was a piano over there.
Okay.
And it's stacked right here.
Oh, interesting.
You remember that, Bud, or not?
Vaguely.
Because we kids used to come up, thought we were big, and we used to
Jump off of it, right?
And is that where you played the piano over?
No, I started in the church in
Okay.
1958. I'm still an antique. But these, that's Amos Asbury. But I thought you might like to see, because here's a beautiful picture of that communion set.
Oh.
And that was the anniversary of the church. But there's a lot of people from East Hartland are in this, like Alice Parmalee, you can see. And then this is the planting of the tree.
The tree that was cut down?
And that's the big Sunday school. We used to have a lot of children
Children
in
at Sunday school? Yeah, I know that was a miss to not have it later on in the years.
No, the kids
Yeah,
were
parishioners.
always wonderful.
Yeah.
And we used to have a big picnic at the end of the year, you know.
Yeah.
My mother just loved children, and
Yeah,
they loved her.
things have changed. I went to Methodist church growing up in Wallingford, and a big dinner was held for the family afterwards. It was a time of rest and relaxation, visiting with my grandmother, and now everybody's
Too busy.
Off and
too
running,
busy.
yeah, in and out.
That's why I still love Hartland. We're still a bit taste of
Little
that.
taste, yep.
A little bit of
That's right,
taste.
that's right.
Because Hartland's really changed since I was young too.
Yeah.
But No, it's still a lot of good people here.
So this pewter set is now at the historical?
No,
It's at the
it's
state.
State Library
Oh,
in
okay,
Hartland.
so they
State
just
library
borrowed
has it.
We had to practically mortgage our homes to get it out.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they allowed it out, to be honest with you.
They also have the one that was at the first church too. That they
Really?
tried- Yeah,
Yeah.
Uriah Holmes had given to the first church and they couldn't get it. We just had, they
They
just.
couldn't get
They
it.
couldn't, they wouldn't let
Well,
it out.
maybe you wouldn't get it now. But we were very fortunate, this, actually. And this picture of Bill Merrill. Who? Bill Merrill.
Oh, Bill Merrill, yes.
He came all the way from
Merrill.
Washington State that day because his ancestry was Nathaniel
Was
Gaylord.
the Gaylords, exactly. He was our
And
first
he
minister.
really was quite a follower
was his
of
last
us.
Merrill, Bill Merrill, M-E-R-R-E-L-L.
This guy.
Like the shoes?
I have cousins,
Yeah.
but it's ILL. though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bill
he is
Merrill.
too.
All right, so we're gonna,
Yeah,
I'm
he
going to
is.
say this at
But
the
he
end
was
of
from
our
out, like,
presentation
in Africa
anyways for
or
the
not,
October
maybe.
2025
He
Historical
was way-
Society meeting. Because, yes, you're most welcome, but I wanted to continue to know that you can take a tour of the house. And is cider and donuts for us to enjoy also. And again, Susan, thank you so much for allowing us to come to your home and
I'm thrilled
it's
that
a
everybody's
change,
here.
yes.
It's an honor. Thank you.